guys, really excited to have my guest on the show, Brad Smeele, with me today. Now, Brad is a former world champion wakeboarder, a real innovator of the sport, actually, for anyone that follows. He was sort of the guy that was known for pushing the boundaries, doing all sorts of crazy tricks. He won Trick of the Year in 2014, was one of the first guys on the planet to land the 1080, as well as a number of double flip combos. However, in 2014, Brad had a tragic accident on the water, which left him paralyzed from the neck down. Despite that huge adversity and life-changing accident, Brad has gone on to use his adversity to his advantage and has used his story to go out there and inspire other people to get through hardships, but also just, I guess, at the core of it, make the most of the life that they have. He's now a motivational speaker, does a lot of time speaking to children in schools, and is an inspirational man. I've followed his journey, and I'm really excited and privileged to have him on the show today and to dive in and have a conversation with him now. So, Brad, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me. Kind of enjoy these things. And I mean, even right there in the intro, you kind of touched on one of the biggest sort of core messages and what I try to sort of speak about and the messages I spread, and it's about adversity being an asset. You know, using what we've got and the stuff that we go through to then move forward and to be able to kind of work through life in a stronger way. So,
yeah, I think it's particularly relevant right now. I mean, obviously, you know, we're all going to face adversity at some point in our lives. But with coronavirus and the way that the world is right in this particular moment, I think there's a lot of people who have been confronted with more adversity than what they used to. I guess my first question for you is, I mean, there's so much to dive into with your story, and I'm particularly fascinated in the mindset side of things. How important was having a new purpose for you in terms of getting through? Like when you had, I guess, your identity taken away from you with your accident, you were known as this professional athlete, you were no longer able to do that. I can't personally comprehend what it's like to go through that transition, but I would assume that purpose and finding a new purpose played a huge role in that. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, and that was something that it took a little while for me to find that. You know, at the beginning, I was just trying to find my way, and you know, was in denial about things, and you know, obviously wanted to work as hard as I could to get whatever recovery my injury would allow. But you know, when that kind of didn't happen, you know, after several years of rehab and didn't really see any results, that's when kind of depression started to set in, because it was, you know, I was aiming for this goal of moving again, but I wasn't even getting close, you know, and I just, no matter how much work and effort I put in. So yeah, that was kind of a huge contributor to kind of the depression I went through. But then it was after that, it was going through acceptance, and then it was kind of, looking at life basically from the truth of where I'm at rather than where I wanted to be and where I was trying to be. And, you know, that was a huge part of it, that acceptance. And then, purpose came in a few different ways, you know, starting the public speaking. They gave me some drive and something to work on and to know that I was, you know, doing some good and spreading positive messages to people. And then after that, it was just finding something that gave me progression again, kind of something to kind of hit those things that I lost. You know, I lost progression. I lost the ability to push myself in the way that I was used to. So I just kind of had to find new ways.
It's interesting. You said something really interesting there, where you said you had to accept where you're at for what it was. I've watched a bit of your stuff online in the past, and I've heard you talk about hating the word acceptance. But that's a really key point, because I think a lot of the time in struggles in life in general, whether it's in business and you're hanging on too long, or, you know, even just things like trying to lose weight and get to places that you want to get to, people are starting from a place where they haven't actually fully accepted where they're at, which means that it's impossible to take the right first step.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, as you said, you know, I hated that word, but that was sort of when I didn't quite embrace it and understand it for the full meaning. You know, I thought acceptance in my situation was accepting that I was going to be a quadriplegic, and that, to me, that just meant being miserable and not being able to do, you know, like all these things that were now limitations that I was kind of dealing with. And so, I had to learn that acceptance meant, it's only about accepting what the truth is right in this moment, and whether that's, financial situation, relationships, job, just general sort of place in life. If we don't accept what the truth is, then we're living in denial. It's like, if you're a millionaire and then you lost all your money, but you kept living like you're a millionaire, you just didn't accept that you'd lost all your money, it wouldn't work. It doesn't match up. So you've got to find that baseline, find that kind of starting point to then be able to move forward from. And by doing that, by accepting this situation I'm in, it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. Now what can I do to move forward in a positive way, rather than I was just scrambling. I was just, I wasn't fully accepting of everything that was happening in my life. And I just was blindly kind of focusing on this one goal that wasn't, I didn't want to, at that point I wanted to give myself that opportunity to heal and to get whatever moving back. So, and for a while that kind of gave me purpose. It was this kind of blind, purpose. And a lot of that was, even the positivity that I was kind of putting across. It wasn't entirely genuine. I was hurting inside, but I was trying my best to be positive, to try and bring myself up. But in a way, a lot of that was trying to please other people and make sure everyone thought that I was okay and knew that everything was going all right. So it was a crazy time. And everything I learned, it took a while. Like it took several years of drilling it in, because, as much as you can understand something about, whether it's a toxic trait that you've got or something like that, but you can't just flick it off like a light switch. Like it takes work and it takes time to kind of work through all those things. So acceptance was just, as I said, that starting point to then be able to go, okay, well, this is what my life really is. This is my financial situation. This is my physical situation. This is my relationship sort of situation. And then you can kind of move forward from there.
Yeah, you touched on something really interesting there, where you said that balance between positivity and putting positive stuff out and not faking it. It's an incredibly important part. How have you managed the negative emotions? And obviously in situations, in times of hardship, we kind of have a mentality where we know how we should react or how it's expected of us to react in that situation. How do you balance having a positive and optimistic lens versus using the negativity in a positive way and accepting that a situation is what it is, and sometimes the situations are shit?
Mm. Yeah, I think the negative side of things, it took a while just to kind of work through them. But I think it was once I kind of embraced the journey of going through hardships and letting anything negative that I was feeling, like letting it actually run its course. Because for so long, as I said, I was kind of pushing it away and I was putting on this positive front, and I was like, okay, everything's, well, not everything's fine, but I'm doing okay. Whereas on the inside, I was hurting. And so by letting myself go through that journey, feel that emotion, understand where it came from, what caused it, what I was doing beforehand, what may have, triggered it or led to that emotion popping up. And then understanding, why, what is it beneficial? What can I do with this? And then by letting myself go through it, then the next time that type of emotion would arise, I'd be better equipped to deal with it. And so, and again, it took a while. Took some time of just trying to understand it each time, and I got better and better at dealing with it as I went on. And I think, that's going back to that adversity being an asset. By learning about it, it meant that it's this whole metacognition thing. It's understanding our own thoughts, being aware of how our own thought processes and everything work. It's like almost taking a step away from our own mind and looking into it from a third person.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
That's right. Yeah.
Why does this lead to that? And what does this emotion mean? And all this stuff. And so by going through all that and allowing it to process it properly, then it just meant I was just kind of using that adversity to learn and to get better at dealing with those things as they come up the next time.
So it sounds like a big part of that is, I don't want to say emotional intelligence, but learning to control those emotions and not just buy into them and let them run away and run their course, but actually being able to look beyond that initial emotional response to something.
It's not necessarily fighting the emotions or pushing them away or anything. It's just allowing them and understanding them. And I think, it's that kind of big difference of letting something flow through you rather than trying to push it away or even letting it go. Is kind of feels like you're almost having to lose something, whereas even if it is something negative, whereas letting it flow through you kind of gives you that understanding to be better prepared next time.
Yeah, you must have had an interesting perspective on ego after all of this, because like when you lose anything, whether it's a business or, in your situation, I guess your identity as an athlete, you must start to truly understand the construct of ego and kind of how much that plays on the way that you show up in the world. What have you learned around that side of things?
Yeah, ego is huge, man. That there was nothing that stripped that kind of revealed the ego issues and everything more than this injury. It kind of stripped everything away that I thought was what made me me, and that's kind of what I've learned to understand of what the ego is. It's basically the story we tell ourselves of who we are. Who we think we are, who we think we should be, and there were so many things. I'd learned throughout my life and been programmed to think that Brad is a wakeboarder. That's the title that goes along with me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So when I lost that, it's like, okay, well, who am I? Who is this guy now that 27 years on is, I had to figure everything out and kind of figure out firstly who I am, and then just kind of start from scratch again and peeling all those layers back, and that's where it was great to have some help, someone who was able to call me out on my bullshit and real, have some real conversations and delve into everything I was going through and really teach me what it all meant. And so again, I had to be very open and vulnerable to allow that in. And at first I was very resistant to a lot of it. But I think the main thing was just, I think that's part of acceptance as well, is accepting who we truly are, stripping away that ego of the story we tell, the thing that we should be, who we think we should be. It's funny, I find like a sport like golf is amazing to reveal an ego. Like, in golf, you hit your shot, the moment the ball comes off the club, you've really, if you're a professional, you've got to forget what even happened and move forward. Same as in life. Any step we take, you can't change it, you can't do anything about it. But the guy with the ego is standing there, oh, you should have seen my shot the other day. Oh, that's not like me. It's not how I usually play, and this and that. But it's I think that's kind of a good analogy for life. It's just once that move's been made, it's accept it, move forward, and work with what you got. Like,
that's sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, sometimes, if you've duffed a shot and you're in the trees, you can't, even if you think you should be shooting for that goal, where you need to be landing on the green, like sometimes you've got to chip out into the fairway and then take a shot. So sometimes in life, if you've got these big goals and you hit sort of some snags, like sometimes you do need to take a moment to get into a position where you can move forward again.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy. I too often in golf try and hit it from behind the trees, and it doesn't work out. It's one thing to say that; it's another thing to actually be able to do that, though, isn't it? Like when you're saying that, I'm going, that's the best analogy I've heard for that particular thing. But do you have any advice on how to actually, any steps that you've learned through your process on how to actually do that?
To be honest, it's grinding away at it. Like, it's acknowledging when you fail, acknowledging when you slip up, be okay with it because we are human. Don't beat yourself up about these things. But it's just trying to be better each time, like, and I think that's important about making mistakes. We all make mistakes, and it's being accepting of them so that we can use them to help us move forward in a better way. Like, that's what our past is for, and the only thing we should use it for is for learning and being better for moving forward. So, I mean, as much as, I wish there was a quick, easy fix or a way to make it accelerate and do these things in a quicker way, I think, to be honest, just like a lot of things, you've got to put the hard yards in. Like, you can't expect to be a master of something without putting the work in. And then sometimes, it's grind away at it and then have a day off. Like, let yourself kind of put your feet up and unwind and just understand and be accepting of the fact that we are human and we make mistakes. And as much as out there it's quite easy, like, and even people would look at me in my situation and go, oh my God, how did he overcome these things? He'd be amazing. And it's like, well, no, I just spent years putting the work in because I had to, because the way I was living and the way my mindset was. So what I was really told at the beginning was that I needed to rewire my brain.
Right.
Because the old hardware, the old belief system of who I was is gone.
Yeah.
So that what my brain thinks and how it works doesn't match with my new reality and my new body. Instinctual thoughts and desires and things that, even just ways that I would relieve stress. Like, I can't go for a run anymore. I can't have a cardio workout to release those endorphins. So I had to kind of figure out how to change things to work with my body and how things are now. So that rewiring is something that we can all do. And, another sort of analogy I use for that is, like, if you take a 13-year-old from New Zealand and move them to the US, they'll probably have a US accent within a few years. Whereas if you take a 40-year-old, move them there, their accent's going to last a lot longer before it changes because it's been wired in for so much longer. And obviously, because I was 27 years old and, there were certain things that were so wired in, these belief systems and things that, they were all part of, my belief system, my makeup, the way that I computed the world and myself in it, so it's kind of just breaking down those belief systems. I like to use visualization, so that if there's anything I'm trying to get rid of, a toxic thought or a toxic trait or something, something I'm trying to improve or trying to be better at in my life, then putting intention and putting energy into that. And if there's that negative thing I'm trying to get rid of, I visualize like taking a pair of scissors and snipping that neural connection in your brain, because that's all it is. It's the programming is in our brain. It's in those neural connections. So the more we strengthen the things that are positive and that we want, the more we focus on that, the stronger they get. Sometimes we have like a toxic trait or something we're trying to get rid of, but we try so hard to get rid of it that we're focusing on it more and we're getting more of a connection. So it's that's where I found it important to kind of understand a little bit about how the brain works. I didn't really study it or anything much at all. Just watched a few videos and learned enough about it so that I understood it and it worked for me and what I was trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that we don't learn about the brain. It controls everything. It's the most important muscle that we have. Our quality of life is directly impacted by our control over it, and we're never taught about it.
No. Yeah, it's wild. I think that's definitely something that should change. And I feel like there's a lot of things in schooling that should change. Like, maybe we were taught it. I didn't pay much attention in like economics and things like that. Maybe we were taught how to pay our taxes, but I sure as hell don't know. And, and I feel like that's not something that we're really taught in school. And same with our mental health stuff. I think as much as we're taught like physical education, like we should be taught mental education as well. And I think a lot of that, learning about that, will help people deal with anxiety and stress and depression and the things that we all go through in life on different levels.
Are there any particular tools that you lean on more than others when it comes to that? Meditation, stuff like that. Do you meditate, or like, do you have any tools that have you found really useful that you keep going back to?
I meditate very poorly. I mean, I try sometimes, but to be honest, my meditation is at the bottom of a swimming pool, surrounded by the ambient noise of water, and just holding my breath and kind of trying to focus on nothing really. Just letting it all go and relaxing. And so for me, that's kind of my escape, if you will, or my way of kind of bringing things back to center. And I think it's important for people to find something, to know, whether it's one thing or several different things that you can use as tools to reset and kind of, we go through so much stress, and we're wired so kind of, we're so high wired at the moment, with our foot to the floor with jobs. And, I feel like a lot of jobs aren't 9 to 5 anymore. You're getting emails all night and having to do a whole bunch of stuff. And so I think finding a way to just take your foot off the gas and relax a little. And, we all have our different ways of doing that. But yeah, for me, it's just finding a way to push myself. Kind of coincidentally, part of that and the breath work I do has brought me this kind of more peaceful moments of, whether it's for 2 minutes or 5 minutes at the bottom of a swimming pool, just kind of there relaxing, and nothing really else exists or matters.
Yeah, well, that is a tranquil feeling when you're underwater. I was amazed. I mean, I remember the first time I saw a video, I think it was on Instagram or something, of you jumping in and going to the bottom of the pool. I was like, man, this guy is crazy. How does he face, how do you face that? What is your relationship to water now? I mean, like, you say that it's a form of meditation for you. What was it like having to broach going into the pool for the first time and re-entering the water? It was such a major part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I lived around in the water before my accident, and it just, it was 3 years after my accident until I got in the pool again, until I even was submerged in water. And that was when I was in the States. I just got my buddies to throw me in my pool, and then got into hydrotherapy and through the physio at the Millennium where I go, and then just it came about through being told no to scuba diving. Like, a doctor was like, no, you can't scuba dive because of the risks of breathing compressed gas underwater and the nitrogen bubbles, and potentially on the scar tissue in your spinal cord, blocking the cerebral fluid flow and all this stuff. And, I was pissed off because it was like this door I was wanting to enter closed right in my face. But really it was staring me toward one that was much more, they brought a lot more to me with the actual breath hold stuff. So that was when he told me that the risk was from breathing compressed gas underwater. I was like, so if I hold my breath, that's right. But it just coincidentally brought me this kind of progression element that I had been missing. And then, I don't know, it was just through some friends. Like, we got in the pool and was practicing holding my breath, and I got to 4 minutes or something, 4.5 minutes, and then all of a sudden, with this idea of getting me freediving, and it just kind of spiraled from there. But I think really for me, I just feel like I've got this connection with the water, and even though I can't feel things on my skin kind of below my shoulders, like when I'm in the water, I can, it feels like my body's aware of it and it knows what's going on.
Yeah, cool.
But the thing I really love about this freediving thing, and it's like when I'm at the bottom, it's this kind of trust. Well, it's a lot of trust in my friends to get me back to the surface, and they've got a lot of trust in me to know what I'm doing and be able to signal at the right time and everything. And I think it's just something about letting go. Like that's something I've had to learn and really deal with, is letting go of control.
Yeah.
Because I've lost a lot of control of a lot of things. And embracing that loss of control was something I felt that was, what's the word? Almost just, kind of owning it rather than just accepting it, or even denying it. At first I was denying the lack of control. I was pissed off about it. I hated it. And it would get me so frustrated. But then embracing it and sitting at the bottom of the pool, knowing that I have to rely on someone else for me to survive in that situation, was just such a freeing thing for me. It like just, I don't know, just kind of let go of all that, me trying to hang on to control. And
well, there's so much stress and anxiety there, isn't there, when you are trying to control everything? And there's so many uncontrollables, particularly in a time like now. I mean, we've very quickly realized how little control we have over a lot of the things we thought we controlled. And I think in that you realize how much tension and stress you hold in your body from just trying to control things.
Yeah, and a huge part of that acceptance thing is learning what we have control over, what we don't. I feel like there's three kind of levels. You've got control, you've got influence, and you've got no control. Like I can control, obviously, my thoughts and, what I say and things like that. And then outside of that, I can control two things, my chair and my phone. Like physically control them. There may be some other things there, but, everything else, I had to let that go. And so I think that part of acceptance is acknowledging these things and understanding them so that we don't put energy into things that we have no control over.
Yeah, right. It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Are you throughout your life, it seems that you've been the guy that just pushes the limits. Like you're the guy that's found himself in a situation where you are told by the doctor not to go in a pool, and you you decide to find a way that you're going to do it anyway. You're the guy that in your wakeboarding career pushed the limit. I mean, you were known for pushing the limits. That was what made you such a fantastic wakeboarder. You were willing to try stuff and push the boundaries when other people weren't. Is that a message that you or a piece of advice that you give people in terms of maximizing life?
For sure. I think, although, I was always the kid that was doing backflips off trees and whatever, running up walls and doing backflips and whatever I could, but I was always the kid that got hurt doing them too. It was just kind of this passion for life and pushing the limits and things. But I feel like, people are all on a different level with those sorts of things. There was this really interesting video that I watched, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was about wingsuit flying, and it was sort of, I think, maybe a Red Bull video of some sort. And there was like a doctor who was a wingsuit pilot, and and that he did the study on that adrenaline junkie kind of thing in our DNA. And there's this, for whatever reason, I remember it's like the DRD4 or chromosome on chromosome 11 or something. That's, you got like a number, either a 2 to 11 on this chromosome level, and if you're an 11, you're like an extreme adrenaline junkie, or if you're on the lower numbers, then you'd probably sit at home and stay in your safe little bubble. So I think everyone's on a different level there, so you've got to kind of take that into account. To me, I would say I'd probably be at like a 9 or something, not crazy adrenaline junkie, but more calculated, but still, out there for the...
Still pretty up there.
For the thrill. And yeah, I just think, we can't... Well, for me, living is closer to that edge of life and death, whereas living for other people can mean something else, And so without pushing the limits, without testing myself and seeing how far I can go and what I can do with my body and with my mind, like without that, life just felt empty.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between being alive and feeling alive.
Yeah, like existing and living.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, I was just existing. I needed to find a way to really live. And that wasn't just through getting in the pool and holding my breath, but, getting out into nature and, whether it's in a manual chair for my friends pushing me around, or in my off-road chair on the beach, or, just getting out amongst it again. Because I hated the stigma that came along with this injury, that I kind of, now I'm supposed to just sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, well, no, I'm not wired that way. Like, sure, I can try to change my wiring, but I feel like that's just so hardwired in that I've just got to find a way to fulfill that again and feel that.
I think that's one of the huge reasons I have so much admiration for you, is because that passion for life is still there despite everything that you've been through. And I feel like across the world, and when you look at the general population, I think a lot of people don't have that. Like, they've got every reason to they've got no excuse to not be out there doing stuff and tackling things and pushing themselves. And I think a lot of people are living within constraints and are not truly alive. Yet you've got people like yourself who have come into, extreme adversity and genuine obstacles, and you're still pushing the limits. You're still trying to get out there and live life to the fullest. And I don't think there's anything more inspirational than that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just, what was I going to say? Something about, I don't know, like I just want to kind of spread that message of pushing past the constraints and the limitations that a lot of the times we put on ourselves, but it could be, society as well and the way we're raised. But yeah, that's kind of one of the biggest messages I want to spread and to inspire people is, push past those limitations. Like, find what limits you've put there yourself, and sometimes it's about understanding why we even put them there in the first place, and then start to work through those. And a lot of them, for me, like, I've still got some limitations, and they mostly stem from fear. And I think, some of those fears are justified, but then they're also, I feel like fear comes from an anticipation of the future that hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
So one of my biggest fears looking forward, and this is what I've tried to pull myself back from, is looking too far into the future or anything. But one of my biggest fears is around sort of having a family, like, raising kids in this situation, not being able to pick up my own child and not being able to teach them things. I'm sure I could, can still teach them things, but not in a physical way, and not go play catch with them in the backyard or whatever. And so that's something that really, I still haven't worked through that mentally. I think it's just something that's going to come when that journey is upon me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, we've all got fears, and we all set limitations on ourselves based on those. And I've always just wanted to push past that. I was watching a video yesterday, and I did a live video thing with Ronix Wakeboards, and I showed a video of the first time I tried a double flip over a mega ramp, which was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And just that feeling, I remember going into it each time, and I'd like back out over and over again. And there was just that one time I was like, nah, this is it. I'm done backing out. I was so sick of it. And I just, committed, landed, rode away from it. And it was just one of those moments that will stick with me forever. And I think it's such a empowering feeling for anyone to push past their own fears. Fear of heights, to go bungee jumping and take that leap.
Yeah.
It's such an invigorating feeling to push past that. So.
Yeah, it comes back to that saying, which is just that nothing great comes inside your comfort zone. The greatest sense of accomplishment and achievement comes when you are pushing the limits. I did a course a few years ago with a guy called Brendan Bouchard, who's a high performance coach, and they did a whole range of studies on neuroscience around what were the kind of key pillars of human happiness. And one of those things was that you should be living, I think it was 15 to 20% outside of your ability at all times. Like, most people, when they're doing their jobs, that the reason that they get sort of mild depression when they're just doing the same mundane stuff every day is that there's no challenge involved in that, and they are staying within their zone. But the moment that you take on a task, whether it's at work or whether it's wakeboarding or whatever it is that you feel is outside of your level of competence, there's like a new energy that comes from that.
For sure. And that kind of comes into something that I've learned over the years, about happiness, about what, what brings us happiness. And, I've almost got to like make a diagram or a graph or something of it. But, if we find our baseline and we kind of, I guess that's comfort zone. If you live on that baseline, then you're comfortable, and at first it's okay, but then it gets stale and stagnant. So I think there's always got to be that element of kind of pushing just past, that kind of incentive and, those goals. And if that is too far, like say in the job, if your expectations from your boss or whatever the expectations of your job is so far past where you can reach, then it's just going to be so stressful, and you're never going to, you're not going to be happy in that situation.
Yeah.
But if it's a goal that you've got to reach for, but you can reach for it, and you put some work in, you study up, you do whatever you need to do, and you achieve that goal, that's kind of where happiness lies. And that also crosses over, that expectation versus reality into relationships as well, like between two people. If my reality is this, and who I am, I've accepted it, I understand everything I can do, and sure, we try to better ourselves. But if the person I'm with, if their expectation of me is far out of where I can reach, then, we're not going to be happy together.
That's right.
But if, there's always got to be that little bit of effort, extra effort to improve, and, and that the person you're with, that expectation can lower it slightly so that you can kind of meet in the middle. And I think that's where that happiness lies, is that meeting in the middle of pushing, one of us pushing ourselves a bit further to reach there, the other person kind of lowering expectations to understand who that person is, and you're not trying to, expect that person to be someone else, who they're not. You kind of accept them for who they are. So, yeah, I feel like I've got to put a diagram together of that.
Yeah, I think you do, man. I mean, there's genuine studies done into that, and I think they found that it was about 15 to 20% outside of that capabilities was when you're at your most happy. So, yeah, it's fascinating, man. I mean, again, it just comes back to understanding those things. Like when you start to understand what those things are, you can start to put things in place to live a really happy, fulfilling life.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Talk to me about what's your relationship with wakeboarding now? It's a sport that gave you so much. It's obviously, it was your biggest passion. It probably still is your biggest passion. What's your relationship with it now in the wake of everything that's happened? And I guess there's been time and water under the bridge now since your injury. You're still involved in
some great analogies there.
Yeah, as they were rolling out, I was going water under the bridge in the wake. What is your relationship with wakeboarding though? Like, where are you at with that?
I mean, I obviously, I lived half my life pursuing it, and so it was a very painful thing at the beginning, and I kind of had to take a bit of a step away. I mean, even 6 months after my accident, and then a few months later, I was commentating some local events, and I enjoyed that because I was again, amongst the community again and people that I hadn't seen. And but yeah, it was a struggle. It's like that love of your life, and you break up, but you're seeing her pictures on Instagram every single day. It's the same thing, like. And so I really struggled with that until, again, I kind of went through that process of acceptance and everything else. And to me, like the main connection I have with wakeboarding is just through the people that I met and made connections with and made friendships with throughout my years over there. So, I mean, and that's why I go back to the States at least once a year. I mean, we'll see how long it's going to be until I can go back now, but I go back to see my friends. I don't go back really to be around wakeboarding, but I end up around it anyway. And my first trip back and going back and being there where I got hurt and everything, the side of the injury, it was a bit painful there, but it was a huge stepping stone for me to get through to then be happy and be able to be a part of the sport again. And now, I do a little bit of coaching. Some of it's in the boat. Other times it's people sending me videos, and I'll just send them some tips. And so, yeah, because if it was a degree or whatever, I'd have a PhD or a master's or something. in wakeboarding. So I want to be able to use that knowledge that I've gained over the years, and a lot of the time it's passing it down through some of the new teammates that have come on board with Ronix. I mean, it's a whole wave of new younger guys coming through, and so yeah, I enjoy it. It just took a while for me to be able to, I guess I was grieving the loss of it, really.
Yeah, of course.
That grieving process.
Yeah, of course, man. Talk to me. I mean, how much recollection do you have of the accident and the day of the accident? And I mean, for people that aren't familiar with your story, can you just give us a little bit of a background to that? And yeah, talk me through that day.
Yeah, so I mean, usually in wakeboarding, you're behind a boat and you're doing tricks and you're landing in the water or crashing in the water. This was on a mega ramp, so I was taking off out of a pool that we'd dug on a peninsula that was probably 10 feet above the lake level. So it was kind of a step down. We're launching off a ramp, so we were kind of going up out of it and landing on a landing ramp. And I just, as I said, when I was learning the double flip, I kind of bailed out each time. I was doing just a single flip, but I'd do the first half of the first flip really fast, and then I'd open out and do the second half really slowly, so I knew I had enough time for the second flip. But that was also, when I was going for the double flip, that was also my bailout if something felt wrong. And unfortunately, just something went wrong, didn't feel right. I slipped my hand off the grab and opened up too late, and I'd gone bigger than I thought, and ended up tumbling down onto the ramp. Sort of just got my board down, but then I kind of tumbled forward, tucked my head under, and basically forced my head into my chest, forced it kind of forward, and the tops of my shoulders impacted right on the ramp and shattered my C4 vertebrae, and I was knocked unconscious straight away. And by the time my friends got to me, I was face down in the water, and they flipped me over, and it was probably a minute or so by the time they got to me, and I was blue in the face, not breathing, eyes wide open. One of my friends thought I was dead. Just
far out.
But it's actually something that I've learned about through the freediving is this mammalian dive response that we have, and it's the body, when it knows that your face is underwater and you're unconscious, it knows not to breathe.
Wow.
But when you get turned face up and you feel that, it feels that air against your face, and whether there's a breeze or whatever's going on. So when my friends are literally about to do CPR on me, and but I just, my instinct came in, and that reflex kind of kicked in, and I just started breathing and got conscious on my own, and it was sort of, I've got flashes of memories from the first responders getting there, the local fire department, then the helicopter coming in to pick me up. I remember that all happening. I remember even joking with my friends about, well, semi-joking. One of them, when he called the helicopter, I was like, don't you call the helicopter. It's going to be so expensive. Because I was so broke. I had no insurance or anything. I was so wary of all this and didn't really realize how bad the situation was for me. And I remember everything all the way up until going in for my MRI, and MRI technicians like, all right, we're going to get started. This is going to take a while. Like, make sure you stay still. I'm like, thanks, dude. That's not going to be hard. And I kind of dozed off, and I don't really remember a lot after that for about a week. It's just this big blank spot. And apparently I was awake and aware of everything in that time, apart from the 9-hour surgery. But just whether it's like some trauma block or the medication I was on or something like that. But just have this big empty patch of memory after that, and then woke up in the ICU.
And so what are those days and weeks and months like after that? I mean, obviously, a huge toll on your family. Like you said, the situation itself it's not just about the injury. It's the financial side of things. There's so many layers to it.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, that first week after becoming aware, like, I wanted to end it. I didn't want to be around anymore. I felt like I was going to be such a burden on my friends and family and everyone that was around. I mean, I already was seeing these things that everyone is having to do now because of because of what I've done. and then, it was through the support of that community, my family, and the whole wakeboard community, and that's kind of where I turned my attitude around and decided I was going to fight, and I was going to beat this, and yeah, and I think in a way, like, as much as it's not the way that I thought it was going to be, like, I've overcome this. I've beaten this because I'm able to live a happy life. I've gotten past it mentally, and I've accepted the situation. Even though I'm not up and moving, which is what I thought I would get. Yeah, I truly feel like I've made a good recovery, even though, yeah, it's not the way that it was envisioned. But yeah, I mean, at that time I had pneumonia. I was on the ventilator. It took a long time to clear all the gunk out of my lungs, and every day I was getting X-rays at 5 a.m., getting woken up for X-rays, and then throughout the day they're like suctioning my lungs, and they did bronchoscopies, and I woke up halfway through one of those, and then my heart stopped in another one, and then when I was trying to wean off the ventilator the second time, my second attempt at it, my heart stopped again in front of my mum, and so it was a scary time. It was about 4.5, 5 weeks in the ICU, and then got moved to a specialist spinal unit up in Atlanta, and that's where I finally got off the ventilator. It was once they figured out like how I work that I started to be able to push again. They just had to give me goals.
Yeah, right.
That's all they had to do. Like with the breathing, it's like, okay, we're going to get rid of the ventilator out of your room, pull the trach out of your neck, close up. If you can do 16-hour days, 4 days in a row. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's all I need to do. Like, you should have told me that weeks ago. Like, and next thing I'm doing 18-hour days because I wanted to be off the ventilator longer to be able to talk with my girlfriend at night and things like that. Because I had no voice, I couldn't eat or drink while I was on the ventilator. Because they inflate a balloon right above the hole that they put in there, like in your throat, to stop the air from coming out.
All right.
So yeah, get through the vocal cords and all this other stuff. So yeah, I went like a month without speaking, eating, or drinking. And then and so once I was in that spinal unit, I was able to start getting better and get into a wheelchair and get my blood pressure under control, because all of a sudden my muscles aren't pumping the blood back around from my legs, and so sitting up like this in that first few months, like I probably would have passed out. So yeah, and then it just became this big learning thing. Like I just learned that I was going to have to dictate my care, and I was going to have to be so like over the top and finicky with everything, because one little slip up, if my pants are put on wrong in the morning, I could have a pressure sore by night, which would have me on bed rest for months. So I just had to become so like particular about things. And what they sort of say is dictating your care. So that was kind of the biggest thing I kind of had to learn and bring back, and then now implement in with all my caregivers and stuff. So.
Yeah, right. It's really fascinating what you said there, though. It's a powerful piece. I just want to circle back to about having small goals, because surely that, I mean, for anyone that's going through any adversity, or anyone who's feeling lost, or in general, just having goals, how important is that? And what's your relationship to goals, and what's your advice around goal setting?
I think obviously goals are super important. We need them to have that kind of, what we were talking about before, that diagram of, pushing and stretching ourselves and becoming better and learning new skills and stuff. So I think it's important, to have big goals, or a big goal, but within that we've got to chunk it down into small achievable ones, because if you've got this huge giant job to do, then it can be overwhelming. But if you break it down into small achievable goals, then each time you achieve those, you get that kind of rush of achievement and feeling good about yourself, and you're also another step closer. So I'm kind of having to do that at the moment with writing my book. I'm having to really chunk it down into daily goals. Okay, if I can finish writing about this 1 week or this one topic today, then I'm done. I can move one more step closer to finishing, rather than going, holy crap, I've got to write an entire book.
Yeah. That's important.
Yeah. So chunking them down and and also being open to what life kind of wants to allow for us. I'm not a religious person, but I've started to learn to live by faith, and this is more just faith in what's meant for me in my life. And obviously, we've got to work to achieve things, but if that thing you're working for is not meant for you, then I feel like that's just kind of how things are. And it's a weird balance, because I don't believe in fate as such, because I don't believe things are pre-written. But I believe that what's meant to come our way will come by, and sometimes you got to work hard for it. Sometimes it'll just fall in your lap. But just trusting in the process. Like right now, to trust in the process is to stay at home and let this coronavirus thing settle, and trust in the people who are our leaders. And thankful that we've got a good one here in this country. And
yeah, phenomenal.
some other clowns around the world, sorry. But it's just trusting in the process, and sometimes we can have a goal, but it might not be meant for us. So it's being open to learn new things, and to know that along our path there are forks in the road that might be, there are different ways we're supposed to go. And I think it's just, it comes down to, we make these choices throughout the day, every day. And, we're just trying to do the best we can. And, we don't know what's going to come, but at the end of the day, once we make our choice, we accept what that is and we move forward. And, I think that's just a good way to kind of move forward, and just trust that things will work out as they're supposed to.
Yeah, totally. What's your relationship to like gratitude? I mean, a large part of what you're saying comes back to, I guess, being grateful for the things that you do have and not focusing on what you don't have. How big a part of your journey has that been?
Yeah, gratitude's been huge. I tried it from the very beginning, and it was really tough to be grateful. But it was once I ended up in a relationship with the girl who I met after my accident. She didn't know me before. And I was in a bit of a relationship with this girl, and then next thing I was having to be grateful for my injury, because it brought me to where I was and meeting this person who I fell in love with. And that was it. Kind of gradually became stronger and stronger, like my ability to be grateful for where I'm at. Being grateful for the things we can do and the things we do have, and rather than focusing on what we can't, was one of the biggest things that kind of helped me through. That's where, I stumbled across that free diving, and, there are these other goals that I wanted to do, because for so long I was just focusing on what I used to have and what I can't do anymore. That by steering my intention and my energy and everything toward what I can do and what I do have, it tied in with this Huna wisdom, or the principles of Huna, which are these things that my auntie sent me very early on after the accident. And I think it's the third one is energy flows where attention goes. So it's about putting our intention toward the things that are more positive for us, and gratitude's a huge part of that. So
it's powerful. What I've heard you talk about finding true happiness a bit. What does true happiness mean to you?
True happiness is understanding that we can't be happy all the time. Life comes in ebbs and flows. It's a bit of a roller coaster, and it's. I think happiness just comes. It's more that baseline of happiness, and that comes from an understanding of what we have control over and stuff, like that. Again, going back to that diagram of where our baseline is, and then being able to stretch and achieve goals and grow and kind of expand our capacity to for what we're capable of. I think, going through just the journey of it, understanding that this life is not always going to be perfect, and happiness doesn't reside in more. Actually, here's a good quote that I like. It's out of my favorite book, which is called Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And it goes, happiness, you see, is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. And I think that, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't pursue, goals and gaining more, but by increasing our capacity to enjoy lesser moments, or having less, or, when I was living in a trailer at Lake Ronix with no power and no running water, and I was out there on my own, like trailer trash kind of thing, and people would look at that and they're like, no, like, you're supposed to have a big fancy house, and you're supposed to want a nice car and more money and this and that. But it's like, I was just living my passion and doing the things that really that I enjoyed every day, from building to wakeboarding and hanging out with my friends. And so that's where I really learned that to be completely happy doesn't mean you have to be super rich or have all these fancy things. It's adjusting what we can control, and that ability within ourselves to like control what our expectations are, what our goals are, and things like that. Like that can make a huge difference on our happiness. And that, it's weird because it can sound like a little bit of a cop out to be like, oh, well, just expect less of yourself and then you'll be happier. Like, you still want to be able to have goals and push yourself. You can't take the throttle off completely, but it's just about balance, like a lot of things.
And it goes back to that thing. There's people who have everything in the world, the money, the fame, and they end up killing themselves. It's if you can't enjoy what you have, which is a skill and a learnt skill, then no matter where you get to, you're never going to be able to enjoy it, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's another thing. I think it was out of Way of the Peaceful Warrior as well, where they talk about someone who's like a rock climber climbing up this giant cliff to the top of the mountain. He gets to the top and there's no guru there waiting. There's no big pot of gold. There's no, the happiness and the stuff that we need to take from these moments is in the journey, not in trying to get to this destination.
Yeah.
So happiness is in the journey. It's part of the process, and understanding that, you're not going to just get to one point and all of a sudden you're happy forever.
Yeah.
It's that constant kind of growing, learning, accepting.
That's why doing what you're passionate about as often as possible is so important, though, right? Because if you're doing something you dislike a lot of the time in order to get somewhere that doesn't make you happy anyway, because happiness is something that's internal, then surely the answer is to do more of what lights a fire inside you anyway.
Totally, and it's hard when we've got to earn a living, and a lot of people don't enjoy their jobs, and sometimes it's a means to an end. You've got to do these jobs, and it's kind of weighing it up. Like, okay, if I've got this job that I don't like, but I'm earning good money, which allows me to go out and do the things that I enjoy, then that's all well and good. But if you've got a job that you're slaving away that doesn't allow you to enjoy life and to truly be happy, then you kind of got to reassess things and
100%, man.
Find a better balance. But again, it's easy for me to say that sitting here, not necessarily needing to go out and earn a living to survive through this time. I know can be very difficult and must be very difficult for a lot of people who do rely on a day-to-day or weekly income to put food on the table and things like that. So another thing I've really tried to work on is understanding that we're all different. We're all in there's a quote that, or an analogy that was kind of put forward. It's not, right now we're not all in the same boat. We're all weathering the same storm, but we're in different boats. There are some people in a tiny little dinghy crowded with 10 people and struggling to get over the waves, where other people are in super yachts just kicking back, drinking champagne, in this time. So it's one thing I've really tried to work on is understanding that we are all different. We're all programmed differently, and we can never truly understand someone else and where they come from, because I really like the analogy, like putting yourself in someone's shoes, but I feel like it's kind of misunderstood. Like, people think of that as looking at something from someone else's perspective, whereas I feel like putting yourself in someone else's shoes means you've walked every step that those shoes have walked, every scuff mark, every time they've stepped in shit, everything that they've gone through in their entire lives. Like, there's no way that I could ever fully understand what for whatever example, Mexican immigrant into the US who's a single mother. I could never understand what that person goes through, because I haven't gone through that journey, and I'm not programmed the way that they're programmed. So I think being accepting of that and knowing that that everyone's on a different journey.
Non-judgment's a big part of that, eh?
Yeah. And I'm always been very intrigued by what leads people to do things. Even, if you look at the very worst of things that happen in the world, whether it's terrorism or whatever it might be, it's very easy to go, oh, that person's evil. But, to me, I'm like, what happened in that person's life that led them to this?
Yeah, well, there's so much power in that, though. Like, there's so much power in that just in every day. Like, the more understanding and empathy we have for each other on any level is important. Like, if someone is rude to you or snaps at you, rather than just going, that person's a bitch, or, whatever, there's always something behind it. And, it does come back to just understanding that everyone's going through some battle, and we've all got our stuff going on. And the less judgment we show towards each other, the better, really.
That's it, man. Empathy. That's a good word to sum it up.
Yeah. What is your advice to people that are going through a hard time right now, whether it's personal struggles, whether it's due to the coronavirus and the current circumstance, to the person that's having a tough time? What do you say to them?
Well, I think right now, as I said, it's hard for me to understand or really know what, if there's someone having a hard time financially because of this, or in the job space, I don't really know what I could tell them, apart from to look into, getting financial support from the government, or whatever sort of aid packages there are like that. And again, I think for people in that situation, it's just knowing that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. This isn't going to be like this forever. But just in general, I think anyone who's struggling, I think in terms of anxiety levels and things like that in this situation, it comes back to just, bringing things right down to what you can do right now, and whether that is like, okay, you can either work from home. If you can work from home, cool, or if you can't, but you've been putting off all these jobs around the house, then get into that. If you want to pick up the guitar, or for me, I've got a harmonica that I've been playing around with, and if you watch the Ronix live yesterday, I was doing trick shots with a ping pong ball from my house.
It's awesome.
Going, okay, what can I do? And it's if there are things you can't do, there's no point in stressing over it. And again, it's easy for me to say that. I can understand it's probably stressful if someone's hard up financially through this, but again, stressing over it's not going to achieve anything. Looking at what your options are and what you can do about it right now is I think what's going to get people through. So, and just being empathetic, being kind, being understanding and really embracing the connection that we all have from a distance right now, I think is kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Look, I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you for hours. Your story fascinates me, and I don't know. It's a perspective that is not common. Like, it's not every day you talk to someone who's been through the level of adversity that you've been through, and I can't understand, like you said, what it's like to have walked in your shoes. But there's a lot of your lessons and mindsets and attitudes that I know I can take away, and that will drastically improve my life. And I've got that from following you on social media. And I hope that this conversation reaches people and they can take some of those lessons for themselves and apply it to their life, because something as simple as gratitude, or as simple as that, like pushing your boundaries and getting a little bit more, can be life-changing.
Yep.
And so firstly, I just want to acknowledge you for your time, and thank you for having the conversation. And mate, I hope you realize what an impact you do have when you share your message. I know it mustn't be easy to always talk about these things, but you're a great example of finding an advantage in your adversity, and you're a great example of how you can find happiness and purpose in service of others, and you seem to be constantly doing that. And so I just wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it, and cheers for having me. It was it was a good chat. Enjoyed it.
Awesome chat, man. A couple of last questions for you. What does it mean to you to have lived life fully, or to go out and live life to the fullest?
I mean, it was kind of, I went through a bit of a tough time after my accident, because I lived life so much to the fullest before my accident, traveling the world and, just doing what I loved. And for a while that became this kind of curse that I struggled with, because everything was a comparison against that. Now that I've accepted how things are, and I've embraced the fact that was an amazing journey that I'm very fortunate to have been on, and probably lived more in my 27 years before my accident than most people would in their entire lives. So yeah, I think that's just, we never know exactly what's going to happen in our lives, so we need to take each day as it comes, and take as much opportunity to live that, to live our life to the fullest every day. Because like, if I go to another phrase that I've used, I had it printed on some t-shirts actually, and it's never forget yesterday, but always live for today, because you never know what tomorrow can bring or what it will take away. So I think that's just about living in the present, and knowing that we can all go through adversity, and we never know what's going to happen day to day, so got to live it up.
We'll leave it there. That's a great note to finish on. Brad, I really appreciate your time, man. You're an absolute inspiration. Keep sharing your message, keep living to the fullest, and it's been a pleasure to connect with you, man.
Hey, thank you. My pleasure.